Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're opening up some source material that really gets to the core of what we call college-level thinking. And this isn't about, tuition costs or boring lectures. It's about something quieter, maybe a kind of silent crisis in the classroom.
Right. It's about that feeling of having your own way of knowing, your natural, often brilliant way marked down, seen as, well, deficient.
Exactly. Our mission here is to try and understand this hidden wound that many students carry, especially those who maybe process language a bit differently, how they navigate or struggle to navigate academia.
And the whole investigation really, it pivots around one specific kind of startling piece of evidence.
Okay.
A single grade. A D received on a short paper, an analysis paper.
Ouch. A D can feel pretty jarring, especially if you thought you did okay.
Well, yeah. And the student, a returning student in this case, was told the paper just needs more analysis. But the real conflict wasn't just the grade itself. It was realizing, wait a minute, I was marked down for doing exactly what the assignment asked.
Whoa. Okay, that grabs you immediately, doesn't it? The assignment said one thing, but the actual grading, the rubric maybe, demanded something totally different.
Pretty much. The student was penalized for fidelity, for listening really closely to the text, to the source's voice.
But the professor expected something else.
Yeah, the professor expected projection, pouring an external framework onto the text. And our sources argue this clash, this fundamental misunderstanding, it stems from a mismatch between two ways of processing language.
Okay, lay those out for us.
Gestalt Language Processing, GLP, and Analytic Language Processing, or ALP.
Right. So let's anchor that. What did the student do versus what was expected?
Okay, so the student's approach, that's exegesis. Think of it as listening carefully, finding the voice already in the text. It's about fidelity, tracing the pattern, the coherence.
Okay, listening out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the expectation for analysis, that was eisegesis. That's pouring your own framework, a theory, maybe an ideology, a specific lens into the text.
Reading into it, projection, overlaying something.
Precisely. Overlay. That's a good word for it.
So wait a second. You're telling me that in academia today, the act of reading into a text, projecting onto it, is seen as the mark of intelligence. While carefully, meticulously reading out what's actually there, that's seen as shallow.
It often is, yeah.
How did that happen? Why did the system start equating depth with, well, eisegesis?
Well, it's complicated, but this practice, it has centuries of history behind it, a real pedigree.
Okay.
To get why projection is seen as serious college-level work, you have to look back. Our source points to examples like ancient rabbis looking at the Song of Songs.
Which is basically a love poem, right?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
But they didn't just read it literally. They overlaid this vast theological communal framework onto it, turned it into a charter for exile, for redemption. They were reading into it.
So they were using it as a vehicle for other ideas.
Exactly. And in academic hands, over time, that act of reading into eisegesis kind of became the test, the litmus test for seriousness. It shows you know the framework, you know the theory, and you can make the text work for that theory.
Ah, I see. It's like demonstrating your mastery of the framework, not necessarily the text itself, like framework theater, as you put it.
That's a good way to think about it. And the sources note, ALPs, Analytic Language Processors, they often thrive in this system. They're trained to segment, categorize, apply theory like Marx or Foucault, like a template.
Right, apply the overlay.
And depth, for them, is shown by how cleverly you apply that overlay, how far you can stretch the original text to fit the external idea. It shifts the authority, really, from the text to the interpreter.
And the rubrics, the grading guides, they bake this in.
Oh, absolutely. There's an institutional bias. Higher-order thinking gets equated with adds theory or moves beyond the text.
While staying close, being faithful to the source.
That gets dismissed. Oh, that's just summary. Naive. Lower order, not what we do at the college level. So the system structurally rewards that analytic overlay, the eisegesis, and it dismisses the careful listening, the exegesis of the Gestalt thinker.
Okay, let's circle back to that D-grade incident. The source mentioned the author enrolled late, faced some bureaucratic hurdles, described it as very ADHD GLP. So there was already friction, right? A sense of mismatch.
Yes, that initial friction was kind of a sign. They ended up in this comparative religion class, wrote the paper by, and this is a quote, staying close, listening for the shape of the words, naming the pattern that returned like a tide across the page.
Sounds careful, precise.
As faithful as I could manage, they said. And that careful work comes back with a D.
And the communication breakdown that followed.
Oh, it was painful. The student goes to the professor trying to understand, What does analysis mean if this isn't it?
What did the professor say?
Well, the expectation was so ingrained, so culturally normal for him, it felt obvious. He basically said he'd hoped the student would lean into the rabbinical commentaries.
So treat the original poem as just raw material for centuries of allegory.
Exactly. Not engage with the poem itself, but with what others had projected onto it.
That is just, wow. It's a perfect example of what the sources call the double empathy problem, isn't it?
Textbook case. The student couldn't grasp why the professor wanted invention, allegory, when the poem felt whole, immediate.
And the professor couldn't understand why the student was just sticking to the text, clinging to its coherence, when the real work, the analytic leap, seemed necessary.
They were operating in completely different worlds of meaning, different cognitive universes almost.
And this brings us to the hidden curriculum, that maze of unspoken rules that trips up GLPs again and again.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Assignment prompts just assume you speak analytic overlay. Rubrics use these fuzzy terms, critical thinking, depth, organization.
There's no clear definition.
Exactly. No concrete foothold for someone whose thinking is based on pattern, on immersion, not on hierarchical outlines.
Which makes that advice they got even more frustrating. Being told a paper should be short enough to make your point, long enough to keep it interesting.
Yeah. That kind of advice is useless if you don't already know the secret code of the standard academic essay.
The author called it a Zenkoen, opaque, maddening, designed to make you feel stupid for asking for clarity.
And this friction, this mismatch, it wasn't just in essays. It showed up everywhere.
Like note-taking.
Yeah. The standard is linear outlines, right? Bullet points, tidy. But the GLP mind might be tracing constellations and spirals of connection.
Which looks messy if you expect linearity.
Right. Or discussion grades, often based on airtime, on how much you talk. That punishes silence, even if that silence for the GLP student is actually deep presence, active listening.
And academic integrity, that's a huge one.
It really is. The GLP tendency to script, to quote heavily, maybe remix lines they've internalized. It's a way of weaving meaning from language they've absorbed whole.
But it can look like plagiarism to a system expecting segmented originality.
Exactly. The system flags it as suspicious because the method of thinking, of composing, is just different. It doesn't fit the mold.
There's this one specific question the author asked a tutor that just perfectly illustrates this gap, this gulf between worlds.
Oh, I remember this one. Go on.
They were wrestling with citation guides, completely lost, and asked, how do you cite something if you don't remember the channel or the show?
Yeah, and that wasn't laziness or trying to get out of citing.
No, it showed that for them, knowledge lived as voices and fragments carried whole. Deeply understood, deeply felt, but totally disconnected from the library's filing system of footnotes and style guides.
It's a profound difference in how knowledge is stored and accessed internally.
Wow. Okay, so if knowledge lives inside you like that, as whole voices, whole patterns, trying to write a standard analytic essay must feel like being asked to chop up something beautiful and whole just to fit it into a box.
It can feel like a betrayal of the knowledge itself.
So if the current system dismisses that kind of fidelity, that coherence seeking, as shallow, what does real GLP rigor look like when it's allowed to be itself? We need to shift how we even define rigor, don't we?
We absolutely do. And GLP rigor is not fuzzy or undisciplined. It's incredibly precise. It's recursive. It's resilient. The author points to specific methods.
Okay, like what?
Like coherence mapping. This is the intense work of holding all these threads from a text, from memory, from experience, holding them together until their connections, their inherent patterns become visible. It takes time, patience.
Okay, mapping coherence. What about prosodic argument? That sounds academic. What does that mean in practice?
It sounds fancy, but it's about recognizing that language isn't just words on a page. It has rhythm, cadence, a kind of musicality, how it feels in the body.
Right.
So a prosodic argument makes its case not just by quoting stuff, but by showing how the very structure, the rhythm, the flow of the original language supports the interpretation.
So instead of just saying the author sounds angry, you might structure your analysis to reflect the choppy, fragmented rhythm of the source text itself.
Exactly. You're arguing through form, through cadence. You're showing you absorbed not just the meaning, but the energy, the persuasive structure of the source. It proves a different kind of deep listening.
That is a completely different way of thinking compared to, thesis statement, 3 supporting paragraphs, conclusion.
Totally different intellectual muscle.
And that connects to pattern constellations too, right? Grouping ideas by resonance, by how they feel connected, instead of forcing them into a strict A, B, C sequence.
Yes, And underpinning all of it is the fidelity test, that constant return to the source. Are you honoring its voice? Does your interpretation hold up against the text itself?
So the takeaway here is GLP rigor is about patience, not just speed. It's depth through connection, not just projection.
Exactly. And he also puts it starkly. Demanding this kind of thinking gets crammed into formulaic essays like the 5-paragraph monster. It's like forcing a flower to bloom in concrete.
It's asking for survival, not real intellectual expression.
Right. An act of translation that often loses the original beauty.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. Let's move towards solutions. From critique to action. These classroom tools, prompts, rubrics, even procedures, they're not neutral, are they? They're technologies of power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they need redesigning. We need structural change.
So what concrete changes could work? For assignments, for rubrics?
Okay, one big idea. For interpretive assignments, offer a choice. A path A, path B.
How would that work?
Path A is for students who want to focus on fidelity, tracing cadence, mapping coherence, analyzing internal structure. That's exegesis. Path B is for applying an external framework. That's eisegesis.
And both paths have to count equally.
Equally, both demonstrate rigor, just different kinds of rigor.
Okay, I can see that working in principle. But devil's advocate here. Professors are swamped. How do they grade two fundamentally different kinds of papers, a close reading versus a theoretical application fairly, using one standard?
That's the key. The standard isn't about the content approach. It's about the demonstrated rigor. And that means changing the rubrics themselves.
How?
You need to add a row. Something like coherence work. Make that visible. Make constellation thinking, pattern mapping count as evidence of depth.
Instead of just rewarding the overlay.
Exactly. And change the language. Instead of demanding students go beyond the text, reward them when they show how the text holds together. It values internal understanding.
It shifts the focus from invention back to comprehension, but deep comprehension. And feedback needs to change too, right? That awful needs more analysis has got to go.
Well, it's useless. It has to stop. Replace it with specific, actionable guidance. Like, okay, I see the pattern you've identified. Now, test it against stanza 4. Does it still hold? Or you're relying heavily on citations here, which is fine, but maybe let the text's own words carry more weight in this section.
Giving concrete steps. And departments, should they be teaching these other methods?
Yes. Explicitly teach GLP methods. Model prosodic tracing. Show what constellation mapping looks like. Treat them as legitimate academic skills, not just remedial alternatives.
And policy has a role too, Section 504 ADA.
Huge role. Accommodations can't just be vague requests for flexibility. Policy needs to be proactive. It needs to frame GLP methods as equivalencies from the start.
So be explicit.
Be explicit. State clearly. Coherence mapping satisfies the critical thinking requirement. Constellation notes satisfy organization.
And maybe accept different formats, not just essays.
Absolutely. Welcome audio close readings, annotated texts, visual maps. Stop forcing students to betray their natural processing style just to fit a format they didn't choose, and that doesn't serve their thinking.
Okay, and lastly, something really practical. The student survival kit idea, giving students actual words to use.
Yes. The author mentioned needing plain language scripts for navigating office hours, emails, the whole hidden curriculum.
What kind of scripts?
Simple, direct things like, could you show me what analysis looks like using one paragraph of my paper? Or, I tend to organize my thoughts through connections and resonance. How can I best translate that into the linear outline you're looking for?
It's about empowerment, isn't it? Refusing to be confused or shamed by vague rules.
Exactly. Demanding clarity. Claiming space for your own way of making meaning.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just hammer home that central point again. Depth isn't one thing. It's not a ladder you climb towards abstraction.
It's plural. It has many shapes. For GLPs, that fidelity, that coherence mapping, that is depth. And reducing it to needs more analysis is, frankly, an institutional failure.
The author talked about the sheer difficulty being asked to compress galaxies of thought, these intricate constellations of meaning, into a neat, tidy 5-paragraph box.
It's not just asking for efficiency. It feels like being asked for betrayal, a betrayal of how you think.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've focused heavily on the academic world here. But think about it. If academic success often hinges on mastering eisegesis, on applying a preferred framework, where else might this be happening?
Yeah, what other hidden biases might we be accepting in business reports, policy analysis, even how news is framed?
Are we in other high-stakes areas also subtly punishing fidelity to the source material, punishing careful listening in favor of imposing a framework that just feels more professional or authoritative?
That's the pattern, maybe, that we all need to start mapping out. Where else is coherence being dismissed in favor of projection? That's something to chew on.